Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you get, and that's how we live it. Don't be mad.
Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? So sorry that I had to turn off the sound for the countdown. I was doubling the sound and I couldn't figure out why, so I just muted everything. I figured it out while it was muted. But yeah, and I was going through, and I was across the room because when the countdown was going, and hello Dave and H. Reardon, when the countdown was going down, I was trying to find some material that I knew was down here in the basement. All right. I did, in my shameless grifting, let's wait till it scrolls across, but super chats are always appreciated and make all the right people cry. Please hit like and subscribe. I've gotten over 3,000 subscribers. I'm so happy. So yeah, that was a milestone. And yeah, please do that. Here comes the shameless grifting I wanted to mention. Patron. I fixed it. Patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. I'm only $5 away from my September goal, $5 a month in patrons to meet my September goal. If you can help me do that, it would be greatly appreciated. So one of the things I was looking for, looky, I forgot, is this, did we do 72 already or did we do 73? No, this is just an extra copy of 72. I'm looking for 73. I need to bring this back upstairs. This isn't exciting then. I need to find my 73 handbook. And before we get started with everything else though, one of my sponsors, since we're doing books, A Tale of Two Brothers, I have a link down in the low bar where you can get this through my Amazon affiliate link. Great book as we're coming into, I know it's not yet, I know Halloween and Thanksgiving haven't even happened yet, but it's a great Christmas gift for the young person in your life, for a liberty message that life is more than survival. Life is living. And this is something that we really need to teach the young people today, not to live in fear, because that's what they're seeing all around them, fear. So please do consider picking up that book. I loved it as an adult. But what I did find in my stash that I'm going to be doing a bonus episode on, I don't know, let me look at what issue this is. What is this in here? Well, this is an ad for Against the Wall, but Against the Wall was an anarchist / objectivist. This is volume 9, number 10, but it doesn't say what year it is. I'm trying to figure this out. Oh, what is this? Ooh, there is some. Okay, this is an older one because it talks about, okay, 1981. I'm still trying to find like the 19, and hello, Charles, like 1970. So this isn't early enough for us to cover it yet, but there's an interview in here that we need to cover. And I found September 72 Outlook, which we're going to cover in a bonus. So I've got all kinds of things here that I didn't know I was looking for. Well, I did know, but I did. Never mind. You guys know what I'm trying to say. Let me have some caffeine. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the show where I showed you how the LNC lied through its teeth. How can you expect people to act with principles when they unjustly oust somebody? They do it without due process, and then in their reply to my defense, they lie. What kind of integrity is that? I suggest none. But I wanted to show you something else we're going to do. I am so excited about doing this because it was mentioned in the last LP News. I had this already. Let me show you. The Right to Ignore the State by Herbert Spencer. I ordered this a long time ago. It's in pristine condition. And, hey, name unavailable. Don't know why you're saying damn, girl, but okay. Yeah, you never would have expected the LNC to lie. It's so out of character for them. Okay, so we will be doing The Right to Ignore the State. But today, we're doing the Liberty Solution, which we already started. This is written by Derek R. Willis. Derek sent me a copy of this book because he hoped I would read it. I didn't promise him I'd do anything with it besides read it. But I decided I wanted to go chapter by chapter through the show because I'm always looking for books that are good introductory books for friends and family, but not dumbed down. And this one is not at all dumbed down. And hello, JJ. Alrighty, so you ready? I'm ready. Let's buckle up. Oh, and this book as well, low bar down there. If you want to get it, please use my Amazon affiliate link. I would truly, truly appreciate it. It lets you help the show. It doesn't cost you anything. And the author doesn't get dinged if you do things through an affiliate link. So where we're at is chapter 2. That's why we're in part 2. Destruction of property. This is a much longer chapter. So I highlighted some things that we are... Oh, JJ! Before we get started, I want to show you something. I found something great. I'd seen this before, used, but it was always way too much money. I got this. Puppy, I meant. Look at this. Parliamentary Parallels. Now, I know it's outdated. I like historic books. And you could see, well, you can't see here, the price somebody had marked on it. It was at a used bookstore somewhere for $48. These I've never found cheap. I found it on eBay. I think it was $10. Cheap, cheap, cheap. And it is this nice hardcover. And nothing I love more than a spiral bound. And it just like, for instance, let me just open a page here. You have one? Isn't it great? Did you get it when it came out? I was just like so happy to have this. So yeah, I'm sure Mike and I will be taking a perusal through this. I know it's not, I'm just JJ says it's not particularly useful. I'm just interested, you know. I collect crap and I love books. I'm just such a book hound, but I was so happy to get this. So it says it compares, I don't know what version of Roberts this is. Do you remember, JJ? I'm going to look here. Well, it's 1995. So whatever version was then. Was that the 9th? I think that was the 9th. Okay, wait. Does it say right here? Revised. The 1990 edition doesn't say what edition that is. 10th edition. Okay. So it compares 10th edition with Cannon, Renton, Deschler, Riddick, Kesey, and Sturgis. But I was pretty thrilled to have it. Oh, you said 9th? Okay. I was guessing the 9th. That's what it seemed like. All right. So I just want to put that aside because this is for Cult of RONR, which I don't know when we're going to do that. We were, I think, going to today. But as you know, Mike's wife, Lydia, had those issues. I'm going to try to talk to Mike about doing it daily, actually literally daily, by live. Or, I mean, coming on remotely. You know, side by side. On the weeks he can't come over. All right. Back to, whoops, the Liberty Solution. So we're on Destruction of Property, Chapter 2. And it starts off with a quote from John Locke. And I love me some John Locke, but I also don't like me some John Locke. I know, like, I can be, I don't know. I was so surprised. I was in Clubhouse the other day, and I think I horrified a bunch of libertarians when I told them how much I hate democracy. Oh, I'll look for that. Thank you, JJ. And by the way, I had to resubmit an assignment for my test. I am not at all happy with this exam. It is not ready for prime time. They should never have rolled out this exam. My honest opinion, it takes way too long. It takes months between grades sometimes. And the evaluators, the people who grade, are wildly different and give conflicting, like, requests. And I got dinged for something I quoted Roberts directly for, and they said it was wrong. It's not good. It's not good at all. I wish I was trying to be good, took the new test. I should have just took the old test. I'd have had my certification by now. Oh my God, I hate this new test. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. And you could, yeah, so you submit one paper, crappy, and it could be 15 points apart between evaluator 1 and evaluator 2. Like, one evaluator could give you nearly a perfect score, and the second evaluator gives you a barely passing. It is ridiculous. 18 months, is that how long I've been taking it? Yeah, that's about right. And I'm still not even in section 3. I'm still in section 2. If I had the money, I'd just go and pay and take the other one. I don't know how they would handle that. I'd still finish this one, but I just want my certification. It's an awful, awful test. And literally crappy. It takes months sometimes between grades. And they won't unlock the next section till you finish the one you're on. Sometimes they'll unlock 2 at a time. I've been waiting. I don't think I have it here. I want to see if my bookmarks. Where... You want to know what? My profile is not showing all my bookmarks. Bookmarks? Bookmark manager. Bookmarks bar. That's funny. See, because this should be here. Oh, that's the minimum you can do it for? You talking about the old test? I don't understand what you're saying, JJ, or the new one. I'm confused. I am confused, but that's about how long I've been doing it. I wanted to pull up to show you how long I've been waiting for grading on my motion scripts. Alexander, I'm sorry. I'm like doing Cult of R1R stuff here. Okay, the new one. Gotcha. I thought it was just like you sit for that long-ass test. Maybe I need to look at that again. I thought it was like a you take the test thing. Let's talk about it like maybe I'm Cult of R1R. It'd be interesting. I'd love to talk with you about all the various tests. Yeah, it's my certified parliamentarian, registered parliamentarian, certified as AIP. Registered parliamentarian certification from the National Association of Parliamentarians, Alexander. That's what I'm bitching about. And it's so hard to keep up momentum. My God. And the things they ding you for, it's ridiculous. Oh, God, I hate it so much. All right. And I can only say so much because, like, they tell you, like, things you can't say. Like, I can't even talk about the questions at all. You're not allowed to talk about that. All right. Chapter 2, Destruction of Property. John Locke, whenever legislatures endeavor to take away and destroy the property of the people, or to reduce them to slavery under arbitrary power, they put themselves in a state of war with the people, who are thereupon absolved from any further obedience. Oh, that's interesting. So he's basically like, at that point, you're not obligated to obey the state. And speaking of that, the chapter I'm uploading for Radicals for Capitalism, for patrons only, oh my God, is this chapter great. I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek. Before even Hayek's The Road for Serfdom was written, there were 3 women writing just radical as F. See how good I was? See, I'm trying to keep my monetization. Radical AF liberty books. I used to think people would say, oh, there were some women that were foundational to the American libertarianism movement. To be honest with you, I thought that was just kind of being politically correct. Holy crap, no. The modern American libertarian movement owes its original creation, not that anyone wouldn't have come along and done it later, okay, to 3 women, though. I did not realize that at all. Of course, one of them's Ayn Rand. But the other 2 we really don't know about. So if you are teased by that, you want to hear, oh my God, they were great. And one of them, at least, I don't know if both of them, but one of them at least took it all the way to anarchism in the 50s, like 40s, 50s. Love her. That's my girl right there. But yeah. And there's a quite interesting battle that starts to come about in the 40s and 50s. And, later we see it with Rothbard because he resisted as well. But he finally succumbed to what's the logical consequence of what we're saying. Don't get ass mad. Any minarchists here, don't get ass mad. I love you. I wish I could have stayed one of you. Life would have been more comfortable. But, in my opinion, the logical outworking of what we believe is anarchism. But I love you, minarchists. Don't be mad. Don't be mad. Okay. Next, let's continue. John Locke should be one of the most celebrated philosophers in the United States. His ideas regarding our natural rights to life, liberty, and property were so revolutionary and inspiring that they are rooted deeply in America's founding documents, including the Declaration of Independence. I frickin' love the Declaration of Independence. Not a huge fan of the Constitution. I love, love, love the Declaration. That's like right there with the Statement of Principles for me. There's a misunderstanding of history believed by many, and I had thought this till I read this, that in the original draft, the Committee of Five, which consisted of Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston had written Life, Liberty, and Property, only to change it later to Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. In actuality, not only did it originally say the pursuit of happiness, but Locke inspired this phrase as well. I had always thought too. I had heard that, and I guess it's an urban myth. I kind of wish, though, it said life, liberty, and property. Anyway, so it says, we constantly see attacks on property ownership in various forms today. Sadly, most of these are written off by those who are not affected by the infringement. But that's always the case, isn't it? I mean, you can relate that to almost anything. I see so many people just writing off like my suspension as drama because they aren't affected by it. It's not just drama to me. And something that my case has really inspired me is not to minimize what's going on with other people, because I realize how much it sucks when people minimize what's going on with me. It is as if there's a commonly accepted belief that one's right to property is not endowed, I love this phrase, upon one from the same pre-political source as our right to life, unless the individual experiencing such tyranny is either oneself or a loved one. I've heard this phrase before, but I forgot. But I love the phrase pre-political, that our rights are pre-political. Because too many people think the government gives us our rights. No, the government can only recognize rights, it cannot give them. So, then it goes on to talk about socialism. By its very nature and definition, socialism goes against all of Locke's philosophy by taking the fruit of one's labor, private property, and giving it to the community as a whole. The goal of socialism is perfectly explained by Marx in the Communist Manifesto. He kind of conflates socialism and communism here, though. Not the same thing. The distinguishing feature of communism is not the abolition of property generally, but the abolition of bourgeois property. But modern bourgeois private property is the final and most complete expression of the system of producing and appropriating products that is based on class antagonisms, on the exploitation of the many by the few. In this sense, the theory of the communists may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property. And I do think, while socialism might not be going that far, it goes, socializes property, a lot of it. So if private property is abolished, or even just the private ownership of property by the middle class, or bourgeois, as Marx called them, liberty can never truly exist. Property is the foundation of all natural rights. Don't agree with that last sentence. Self-ownership is the foundation of all natural rights, and property flows out of self-ownership. Now, maybe this is just me, okay? This is where my leftist tendencies will come out a little bit, and you know how I fight against leftists. Not leftists, but leftism infiltrating the party, even though I have some sympathies in that direction. So he talks about benefits to homeless people in San Francisco and how they get so many benefits. There's a ton of homeless people, and that perhaps if you just eliminated all the benefits, you would solve the homeless problem. But he says something that to me, it might be true, but it's so, I don't know. It made me uncomfortable to read it. Let's just put it that way. I want to hear or see your reaction. So he says, if these programs were eliminated nationwide, the homeless population would be required to utilize either private charities in order to get back on their feet, or they would likely perish. Now, that's the sentence that got me, because it's almost too survival of the fittest for me. Some may call this heartless, but for the same reason one does not feed wild animals in national parks. I do not like comparing people to animals. Redistributing the fruits of another's labor only demotivates the laziest in society, who become entirely dependent upon the producers. Well, all of that may be true. I just do not like the way that was worded. Now, the Speaker of the Duck said, Self-ownership presupposes property, otherwise how could the self be owned? I think the term self-ownership is misnomer. Because yourself is not property. The way you own yourself is not the same way you own property. Perhaps we could do a whole show on this, because I think it was Block wrote a big article on the misnomer of self-ownership. Because it's just pure will. No, like, we'll have to do this in another show, but I don't think, and I'm trying to think of, there was something that even, I don't know if it was Locke that said it as well, where they didn't word it that way. I'm trying to think of what it was, and it's slipping my mind, but it had something to do, you have a something about having a property right in yourself, but the way property was defined was different. But I do not think self-ownership presupposes property. I think I think you meant property. Okay, presupposes property. I think property presupposes self-ownership. Yeah, I agree with you. Here's the thing. I'm glad somebody else expressed the discomfort I did, because I really, really I did not like reading that. So he said, let's fix the mental illness and addiction issues with homelessness. Though that is not all of the issues, it certainly is some. My brother was homeless because of that. Instead of leaving them to die out like stranded fish on the shore. Here's the thing, though. Nobody can be forced to fix it. So while I agree with you, Alexander, absolutely, it has to be through voluntarily funded efforts. And let's pretend, even though it wouldn't happen, because we're not heartless. Obviously, we're not heartless because we're having this discussion. But let's pretend that everyone turned heartless and there wasn't anything voluntarily funded, then they would have to find a way to survive for themselves. But we know that's mining a subjunctive. That's not going to happen. There may not be enough help, but there always will be help. But let me tell you where there's not much help. My ex-husband and I used to deal, and I knew you would agree, Alexander. My ex-husband and I used to try to help people. And there was a homeless man that we got very friendly with, and we bring him to church and whatever. But his issue was heroin addiction. There is, at least in South Florida, there was no place, unless you had a ton of money, that was taking in heroin addicts. Alcoholic, no problem. Other substances, opiates, well, that's an opiate, but I mean, taking pills, no problem. Heroin, shooting up heroin, there was no place. The only place we could find was like a really fundamentalist religion where they just basically locked them in a room and told them to go cold turkey. And you want to terrify a heroin addict? Tell them that's the way they're going to get fixed. It really was an eye-opener on a gap, at least that we had in South Florida. But from talking with other people, I think that exists nationwide. Just wanted to bring that out there, that was something. There was nothing we could do. So, and I really don't know eventually what happened with that person, because a lot of the homeless population, they don't stay in one place. Not even because they're getting chased out. They just, I don't know, there's different opportunities. I don't want to compare them like to migratory birds, but they have a circuit. All right, let's continue. And again, my brother was on the streets for a long, long time. And he was on and off the streets from the moment he died. He had all kinds of addiction issues. The one that was constant was alcohol, but there were drugs as well. Okay, not only would ending the welfare state be a restoration of property rights for the producers, but if the state refused to even collect the tax dollars that would otherwise be spent on these programs, it would have a substantial positive effect on the community as a whole. And most people don't think that, but I agree. And then he goes into the property tax, and the property tax is just fucking horrible. He says, with the existence of the property tax, the end result is that no one ever actually owns their property. You're renting it from the state in perpetuity. And he says local governments lust after the idea of a property tax because it's a cash cow for them, and a never-ending one at that. It's a tax you never stop paying. Well, I mean, income tax is the same way, though. If you stop working, you stop paying, but you never stop paying on your property, ever. It says when you actually break it down to its foundational components, the state's entire purpose when it comes to property tax, or any tax for that matter, is to take from the property owner under threat of force an arbitrary extortion fee. That it is what it is. And it's arbitrary because it's not really affected by market forces. It's affected by whatever the voters will tolerate. This, sadly, is not the only way the state infringes on property rights. As owners of property, we have, by natural right, the ultimate say in how that property is handled. And that includes the right to deny state agents or anyone else that matter the ability to search, seize, trespass on our property, or perform any other act we as the property owner do not wish to allow. And we do not. They come on our property and shoot our dogs. Whew. It gets depressing. And he moves on to give as an example of, because we went along to property to unreasonable search and seizures. Then he gets to TSA, of course. The National Molestation Bureau. And the statistics about like hijackings and things like that. So he says the truth of the matter, however, is that being the victim of a terrorist attack or airline hijacking is incredibly rare. Even before the time that airport security was mandated by law, and he's going back to the 70s for that, way before TSA. Said the following headline from Vox would lead any average person to believe that before the United States adopted mandatory airport security, hijackings were a regular part of the airline industry, that the state simply had to step in and fix it. The headline reads, "The U.S. once had more than 130 hijackings in 4 years. Here's why they finally stopped." And the article, the author begins by talking about the March 29th, 2016 hijacking of Egypt Air Flight 181. She then goes on to explain that between 1968 and 1972, airlines departing in the United States had over 130 aircraft hijacked in order to conclude to the reader that the federal government mandating security checkpoints was the fix. While 130 hijackings in 4 years certainly sounds like a lot, about 33 aircraft per year, and I had noticed that when I started going through the history. Damn, there was a lot. And he's going to go on to minimize it, but I don't know. 130 in 4 years is a lot. But I think the airline industry would have taken care of it. But anyway. And it is a lot from a purely relative standpoint when you compare that to the 5.1 million airline departures from 1970 alone. Wow, I didn't even realize the airlines were that big in the 70s. The 33 aircraft hijackings translates to 0.0006%. And then narrowing it to just the flights within the United States, 0.0013%. The state's solution was to mandate that airline companies were to contract private airport security by law and require the searching all passengers and luggage for weapons and other contraband prior to boarding. Following the terror attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon on September 11, 2001, that contractual mandate turned into searches conducted by the state itself. And that's what makes it objectionable. Because he goes on to say what's completely ironic is that if airline companies enacted the same policies regarding security, but did so purely of their own free will, without any state mandate whatsoever, it would not be an infringement on our property rights. So people will go, well, then what difference does it make? It makes all the difference in the world. When you cave on these principles, the edifice comes crashing down. Because, as he says, the only time agents of the state actually have the authority to search personal property is at the expressed consent of the property owner. Well, that's true for private companies as well. But the private companies can then just say, well, then you're not coming on. State cannot mandate that. Then he goes on to talk about the travesty of Breonna Taylor, and I did an entire video of that, critiquing some right-wing like apologetics about the Breonna Taylor incident, which was just, that was a travesty of justice right there. It says, and he's talking about how easy it is to get warrants. It's like ridiculous. The warrants do not protect you. The search warrants I'm talking about, not arrest warrants. Only 4 of the 13 points listed on the search warrant had anything to do with Miss Taylor or her property. And most people don't know that. And it was later discovered that the most persuasive of these 4, the confirmation from the postal inspector, was a lie. Now, here's something that a law enforcement officer said about getting warrants. And I didn't know, they basically choose the judge. You know, you think the judge gets this warrant, he looks it over carefully, perhaps overnight. No, it's like a quick thing. If you've never been a motion calendar at a court, things get decided very quickly. So this is what this law enforcement said. The judge is supposed to read the application and ask questions to determine if probable cause exists. That's what the law requires for a judge to sign a search warrant. In 21 years as a criminal defense attorney in Jefferson County, I've seen this procedure dozens of times. Here's what it looks like. The police officers, always in plain clothes, appear unannounced in a courtroom. They linger until there's a break in the court's business. When a break occurs, they approach the judge and white noise is turned on to make their conversation inaudible to anyone else in the courtroom. A casual conversation happens and the warrant is invariably signed. The judge is not randomly assigned. The police can pick whichever judge they want. Believe me, if I could pick the judge in my cases, I would. Actually, this wasn't a law enforcement officer, it was a criminal defense attorney, sorry. The conversation between the police and the judge is not recorded, nor is there a record of how these conversations happen. Don't think search warrants protect you. It's like a minimal, not any more than the TSA protects you. He continues, contained within our natural right to private property is our natural right to privacy. That's a tough one for me because I'm not sure we have a natural right to privacy. And what I'm not talking about from the state. Because the state is such an artificial creature that exists through force. It says, that is to say, if someone wants to lock themselves away from the world and become a recluse, it is his right to do so. I agree with that, but I'm not so sure that's a right to privacy. And then he says, it's important to note that regarding privacy, we do not have the natural right to keep others from exposing our secrets if they happen upon a knowledge of them. And that is absolutely true. And then he connects this, obviously, then with state actions, which are totally different than private actions. It says the very fact that the NSA is able to collect metadata of Americans without a morsel of scrutiny. And there's no protections. It's land of the free. Really? Land of the free, my left ass cheek. America is indicative of the amount of conditioning that the American people have had in believing that giving up essential liberties in order to purchase a little temporary safety is essential to the preservation of liberty itself, that you must destroy liberty to save liberty. Channeling and paraphrasing in a different context, in different words, and a different subject, George Bush. One of the most corrupt and egregious abuses of state power comes from the idea of eminent domain. Now, let me tell you something interesting. There's a lot of libertarians who are okay with eminent domain as long as it's for a legitimately public use, like a road or something. I don't get that. And a lot of libertarians aren't aware that eminent domain is called out specifically in the Statement of Principles. The Statement of Principles is basically unamendable. Under this bogus power, the state has the authority to seize an individual's privately owned property for public use in order to benefit the population at large. That is the theory behind it anyway. Theory aside, this is by definition a communistic practice. Absolutely. It's the nationalization of property. It's the selective nationalization of property. But it's, can you hear that water? But it's the naturalization, it's the nationalization of property. And good thinkful Doug speaker says, the right to privacy is the right to selectively reveal yourself to the world. Agreed. It's just a weird thing for me. I need to do more thinking on this right to privacy. I don't think it's a right in and of itself. I think it flows from property. Like, I don't think it stands on its own in a way that you could call it a separate right. And that sounds like a good book. Pirate Utopias. Sounds fun. And it says supporters of eminent domain, and I would include the quote-unquote libertarian supporters of eminent domain, love citing the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, which states that private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. And that's what they focus on. And I love where he gets here. He says this ultimately begs the question as to whether compensation can be considered just if the owner does not agree to sell. Woof! Love that. And then he goes on to say something that warms my spooneristic heart. The Constitution was meant to define the powers of the state, and the Bill of Rights was supposedly instituted to further protect an individual's natural rights by further limiting the powers of the state. It was not designed to grant us right. Here's where I start going, channeling my inner Lysander Spooner. If our natural rights are infringed, right here. Ultimately, it does not matter what the Constitution actually says. If our natural rights are infringed upon by the state, then the state is guilty of tyranny. If the founders actually intended for the federal government to have the power to seize property for public use against the will of the property owner and enshrined it in the Constitution, it is still a violation of our natural rights and should be rejected. Agreed. Then he says the only way property that is rightfully owned by an individual can be taken under Lockean principles is if the property is laying waste. Now, I think he worded that a little awkwardly. And let me put this up here. I'm going to look for that. Oh, speaker of the ducks. Oh, did you notice? You were here for my last stream when my phone started ringing. It's quacking. That's what I had. And I have a parrot that quacks. Just saying. I think he worded this wrong because I think if you let it lay waste, like he says, the only way property that is rightfully owned by an individual can be taken. No, I think the Lockean theory is that if it's laying waste, it's no longer rightfully owned. They've surrendered it. And you said you did notice. Great. So I think I know what he's getting at, but I think he worded that wrong. It's no longer rightfully owned. When you let it lay waste, you've abandoned it. You're no longer claiming that right. The acquiring of abandoned and neglected property is not the same as eminent domain, however. Agreed. One thing that and you guys are going to get mad if you didn't know this already. Ooh, I got steaming mad. Okay. The first things I'm going to say you knew, but I'm going to say something maybe you didn't know. One thing that's separated from eminent domain but is equally repugnant to liberty is the idea of civil asset forfeiture. We all agree there. With civil asset forfeiture, a person's assets are seized under the assumption of a crime having been committed, and those assets are later awarded to the seizing authority in civil court. It's piracy. And then he talks about how civil asset forfeiture actually goes back to the founding of this country, which I did not know that, but that isn't what got me mad because, like, it's going to state, right? But here's what got me mad. And we're almost to the end. This was a long chapter. Okay, I'm going to be reading a couple chapters, paragraphs about something that happened in Nevada. Pretty sure it was, in Las Vegas, Nevada. One new provision, when it's talking about how they get around, like there's states that have laws that say the seizing authority can't take possession of these seized assets because, they obviously then have a financial motivation to seize more. Okay, this is how they're getting around it. I did not know this. Oh my God, I got so mad. One new provision was to create what has become known as the Equitable Sharing Program. Doesn't that sound nice? When you hear a government program with a nice sounding name, hold on to your wallets, which is overseen by the Department of Justice. The Ministry of Love. This program allows states to circumvent their own restrictions when it comes to civil asset forfeiture, even in the 9 states that require a criminal conviction before assets can be seized. And these 9 states are California, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, North Carolina, Oregon, and Vermont. Here's how the Equitable Sharing Program works using a hypothetical scenario. A Las Vegas police officer pulls over a car for a busted taillight and discovers $10,000 in cash. He cannot find any evidence of an actual crime, so he writes the driver for a citation for the taillight, seizes all of his cash, citing that he suspects it to be drug-related, and lets the driver go on his way. The officer then logs the cash into the department. Because Nevada law requires a criminal conviction before assets can be forfeit, filing a civil forfeiture case in Nevada courts will result in restoration of the property to the property owner. The Las Vegas Police Department circumvents this hurdle by turning the cash over to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, once again citing the belief, no evidence, that it was drug-related. The DEA then files a civil forfeiture case for the $10,000 in federal court, and the case United States versus $10,000 is born. This is legitimately what the case would be named in this scenario. Once the judge presiding over the case rules in favor of forfeiture, the Equitable Sharing Program shares the proceeds of the cash. In most cases, up to 80% of the proceeds go to the local law enforcement agency and 20% goes to the DEA. As a result, the Las Vegas Police Department in this scenario essentially stole $10,000 from an innocent man and paid the federal government 20% to launder it for them. Did you know about the Equitable Sharing Program? Isn't that infuriating? Yes, Speaker of the Ducks. That's some of the dirtiest shit I've ever seen. That's dirtier than the LNC. And that's an accomplishment. Of course, I'm not accusing them of any kind of money laundering or stealing or anything like that. That was hyperbole, Susan. Okay? The hall monitor, please. That was hyperbole. Like you didn't understand my joke when I said if you censored me, I would gold plate it and bap to it that was a joke. This is also a joke. Well, not what the federal government's doing. That's horrific. Okay? Are you calm, Ms. Hogarth? Just want to make sure. So the way around this now with these states, if you really want to make sure your state is not allowing the seizing authority to keep it, you have to ban the Equitable Sharing Program from your state. And I, as a libertarian who's been very concerned about this and reviewed a ton of shit written by the Libertarian Party on civil asset forfeiture, press releases and the like, have never seen the Equitable Sharing Program brought up. I had never heard of it. Have you? Curious. Okay, we're towards the end now. We should want our children to live in a society where individual liberty is championed and where their right to property is unquestioned. We are raised being taught that theft is bad, yet we tolerate it when the state does it in the name of charity, security, and justice. These are all lies. Redistribution of wealth is not charity, nor is it charitable. And that is the end of that. That was a good chapter. And even though it got into the weeds a little bit, it's still great introductory, if you know what I mean. This is one of the, so far, I think this is my favorite introductory book, because it's not moderate and doesn't, because I'm not moderate. And I don't think soft selling our ideas serves us. That's just me. So the next chapter, though, I'm going to pick a nit. We're not reading it. I always look ahead. Chapter 3 is taxation is not theft. It's extortion. I hate that debate. Taxation is theft is so, it rolls off the tongue. It's a great bumper sticker slogan. I don't like the way libertarians go, but actually, come on. Please, do we have to nitpick a slogan like that? Please, can we not do that? So the chapter title triggered me. But it is what it is. And let's see how long it is, because I want to compare it to the last one. Okay, it's only 11 pages. Kind of like the first chapter was short. So next show that I work on this will be a bit shorter. But so far, great. And I don't think it will turn bad, So I think after a couple chapters now, just seeing how they handled the basic things, that I could recommend this as a great introductory book to give to family and friends. Amazon affiliate link down below. Okay, that's it for that. I'm going to be closing again with what I did last time to let you guys know of an opportunity I may have in AM station here in Colorado, where you can get blocks of time to do shows. And this is a Liberty station, but you have to get your own advertisers. That's basically how you pay for it. So I may have an opportunity to do an hour a week, but I'm looking for advertisers for it. And I think it is such a great opportunity to not only spread liberty, to spread consistent liberty, libertarian anarchism, and also promote the Libertarian Party, particularly the Libertarian Party of Colorado, since the station would be in Colorado. But the advertisements do not need to be from people who are in Colorado, because with this thing we call the interwebs or the intertubes, you can sell shit anywhere. So if you have a product you think would appeal to that sort of crowd, there'd be relatively inexpensive advertising on my radio show if I get to do that. Please get with me if that is something you are interested in. Email me at pinkflameofliberty@gmail.com. I need to make a decision rather fast as to whether this is an opportunity I would like to do. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, got to start, whatever. You guys get what I'm trying to say. I think even advertising your YouTube channel, that this would be a fantastic opportunity, because you get subscribers from all over, and you don't have to commit particularly long term. So if that's something you're interested in, again, let me know. Or if you're in Colorado and you have a business that would benefit, particularly, this is in Johnstown, so, and the reach of AM is much larger, but that's where the radio station is centered. That I think, the Liberty people are very insular in how they choose certain vendors. Like, for instance, if they're about to sell property and they're looking for a real estate agent, they want a Libertarian real estate agent. While Wayne does real estate, he doesn't do it in that area, so he's not a good prospect for that. But if you're a realtor in that area, I think this would be a fantastic opportunity. Certain repair things, home security, firearms training, CBD, that sort of thing. Let me know. All right, everyone, that is it for this show. I just want to remind you, one of you guys out there listening could be my hero to get me the last $5 a month patron I need to make my September goal. I hope you have an awesome night, and I have updated the closing Patreon sequence with the 3 new patrons. Because remember, I was $20 behind. I got 3 new $5 patrons, so now I'm just $5 behind in my September goal. Love you all. I hope you have an awesome night.
take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians, or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not